Welcome to the River Run Women in Business podcast, where we celebrate the voices, stories, and impact of women shaping business, community, and the future of leadership. Each episode, we sit down with inspiring women who share their journeys, challenges, and wisdom to empower others along the way. I am Stacy Palovich, your host. I am the SVP Business Banking Director at River Run. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation that sparks ideas, encouragement, and connection. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Kristan Bishop, a professional EOS implementer. Together, we'll dive into tools and strategies businesses can use to break through the glass ceiling to get to the next level. On this episode titled, Are You Running Your Business or Is Your Business Running You? Kristan Bishop has spent her career helping entrepreneurs grow and thrive. Before becoming a professional EOS implementer, she owned and ran 3 businesses and built a successful career in media, creating campaigns and selling radio and TV advertising. Entrepreneurship runs deep in her life. She's worked with entrepreneurs her entire career, is married to one, and her oldest son is now a thriving entrepreneur as well. It was through her family's business that Kristan discovered EOS, a system that transformed the way they work together and inspired her to help other leadership teams do the same. When she's not coaching teams, Kristan enjoys playing music, practicing yoga, golfing, and traveling with her family. Welcome, Kristan. I'm so excited to have you this morning.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm excited to be here.
So I was looking to get started with just a basic question. What is EOS and how does it help small businesses?
So EOS stands for Entrepreneur Operating System. And it is a proven system with a set of tools that help entrepreneurs run a better business and live a better life.
Sounds perfect.
The first time I heard that, I kind of rolled my eyes, but then when I got into it, it's so true. We help people with 3 things called vision, traction, and healthy. Vision meaning getting everybody on the leadership team on the same page with where they're going and how they're going to get there. Traction by adding some tools and disciplines that just you're making sure that everybody's moving in that direction toward the vision. Mm-hmm. And healthy, meaning these are cohesive teams with great communication who enjoy working together. So that vision, traction, healthy is what we really deliver to them. And it was started by Gino Wickman. He developed it with Don Tinney. And there are over 800 EOS implementers throughout the country and Europe and Australia. And we have worked with over 200,000 businesses helping them.
That sounds fantastic. I know when you came in here and we spoke the first time, we spoke a lot about what we consider the glass ceiling. Mm-hmm. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I thought that was a huge takeaway for me, is that no matter where you are in your business cycle, that almost every, or maybe every business, and you can talk to this, every business hits that ceiling. So talk to us a little bit about that and what it would mean to break through that ceiling.
Sure. So there was a study done in 1965, and it's been redone a number of times, that every business grows and hits a ceiling. And it's called evolution and revolution. So you grow and you hit a ceiling and you either flatline, fail, or you evolve and break through. And you can hit a ceiling as an organization, as a department, or as an individual. And the EOS tools help businesses break through those ceilings. And it happens in many different ways, because what got you to the point of where you're successful won't necessarily help you get to that next level. So EOS provides a system to help you get to that next level using 6 key components that you're working to get stronger in each of those 6 key components. And it includes vision, like I said, getting really clear on where you're going and how you're going to get there. People, making sure you have the right people in the right seats. Data, having that data that gives you and informs you on where you need to go. Issues, taking care of challenges, obstacles, and opportunities, and making sure everyone's heard and you're dealing with those. Process. And then traction, just those weekly meetings and the things that you're doing to all stay connected. That's part of how you break through.
Could you give an example? I'm sure you've worked with quite a few businesses. I would love to hear just an example of a business that you could give us that maybe has broken through that ceiling, and what tools specifically they put into place to do that.
Sure. So I have a number of them. One that comes to mind is a business that was doing really well, but was just at the point where they were stuck. They just weren't scaling and getting to the next level. So they took a step back and they used the EOS system, and I implemented with them, facilitating with their team. And they just really got clear on what right people look like in their organization, got really clear on here's who we are and where we're going. And then they just started to use these systems to make sure that they were moving in that direction. As they were doing this, they had, they had a hiccup in the business in the market. In the market, there was actually Stewart Health went bankrupt, and that affected their business.
Oh, yeah.
They were able to take a step back, look at this, and move forward even stronger because they had these systems in place. They had the right people. They had processes that helped them know exactly what to do and how to do it. And they have thrived even with a challenge in the market because they really had taken a step back to strengthen the foundation.
So it's almost like you're bringing it back to the fundamentals of, right, like what they're looking to achieve. So what would you say in terms of strategy? So if, let's say I'm a business and I've been open for 20 years, just as an example, right, and I've really hit that growth ceiling and I'm trying to get to the next level. What would you say the first step for me as a business? What should I take on in order to get to that next level?
So the first step that you would take would be just taking a step back and getting really clear and making sure very often the owner, which we call the visionary, and maybe the general manager might be the person running the business. We call the integrator. And then all the leadership, be the head of sales, the head of marketing. They're not all on the same page with where you're going. So really getting clear on that vision of this is where we're going, and then getting clear on the core focus. You and I talked about the vision traction organizer. It's 8 questions. What are your core values? What's your core focus? What's your 10-year target? Jim Collins calls it a big, hairy, audacious goal, BHAG. What is your marketing strategy? Really basic. What's your 3-year picture? That's the vision. Then you flip it over and the questions are, what's your 1-year plan? And there's only 5 to 7 goals in a year instead of 27, because when everything's important, nothing's important. What are your rocks? Those are 90-day priorities. And what are your issues? What are those challenges, obstacles, opportunities? In each of the 3-year, 1-year, and rocks, you also have revenue, profit, and measurables. So I think starting there with getting really clear and getting on the same page with where you're going is the most important step.
I would totally agree. And I know after our first meeting, you gave me that 1-pager, and the timing was perfect because I was doing strategic planning with my team, and I brought that 1-pager to my team, and it allowed us to all get on the same page, right? Like what direction are we going? And if we're all rowing this boat in different directions, you can never get there. So totally agree. It was extremely helpful to me, and I'm sure it would be for businesses. So you mentioned something that the first time we spoke, it was this huge light bulb went off for me, and when I'm speaking to small businesses, and the difference between your visionary and then I believe you said it was the implementer. Integrator.
We're implementers, so those words are a little too close. It gets confusing.
Exactly. But that was a huge light bulb for me in when I'm thinking about the amount of small businesses I'm talking through, that you might have them in the wrong roles. So can you talk a little bit about that, about the difference of the roles and why it's important that you have the right person in the right role?
Sure. So going back to the 6 key components, people are, if you don't have the right people, you can't get where you're going. And right people for each organization are different, and they have to figure that out. So the first part, right people, they have to meet your core values. And these aren't core values that you're just putting out and telling customers. These are people you want to work with, people that have your same work ethic and thoughts. The second part of that is what we call an accountability chart. Rather than an org chart, it's what are you responsible for? So we lay out, every business just really simply has marketing and sales, operations, and finance, HR. Those get customized for each business. In addition to that, we have an integrator and a visionary. So the visionary is typically the founder. They're at 30,000 feet. They've got a lot of ideas. They like dealing with big customers. They're not necessarily great when they're getting into the conversations at the day-to-day level. And then the integrator is the glue that holds it together. They are like if you have a symphony, they're the conductor, making sure all the parts work together harmoniously. Gino discovered that in 50% of businesses, the visionary is sitting in the integrator seat.
Which isn't surprising, right? Because you
Right.
think about it. So you might have been a business that started, maybe you had 5 people total. So you
Right.
had to do both.
Yes.
Right. But as you reach scale, that just potentially isn't the case anymore. So it does logically make sense, but still really surprising.
It does. And some visionaries can do it. Some visionaries move so fast that it causes the business a little bit of chaos because they're moving faster than anyone else.
Right.
They have different expectations. When they can get that right visionary integrator, it's like a puzzle piece, and fit it together, we call it rocket fuel.
Yep.
And that's when a business can really take off. When you have that visionary that has the big ideas, and the visionary and integrator are having same page meetings, but the integrator is the one making sure things get done. And the visionary can stay up at that 30,000 feet. It's also really freeing. And I've had a lot of business owners that hang on to that visionary integrator, but then when they can scale to the point where they can either bring up an integrator or bring in an integrator, they get to take a breath.
Yep.
They get to all of a sudden say, okay, I'm not, and they're also no longer the bottleneck. They have the ability to delegate. Dan Sullivan talks about delegating and elevating. And that's not just true of the visionary and integrator. That's true of all the leadership seats. When they can delegate some of the things that they're doing and elevate to their real unique ability, that's when they can thrive. And that's when they bring other people up and give them an opportunity to thrive. And the great thing about the accountability chart is not only that visionary integrator, but when you build that out for the whole company, everyone's really clear on what's expected. People want to know where they fit. They want to know what's expected of them, and they want to see how they're contributing. It's just human nature, and that's what gets people engaged. So that's part of what I love.
Yeah. And again, this is also fascinating. So we went over, there's the 6 different steps, part of the plan. What would you say, do you have one that you would think that is the most important? I know it's going to be hard to rank them, but maybe your top 2, or like where, again, we talked about where a business would start, but just, again, the key movers for you.
All 6 key components: vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction are all important. Vision without traction is hallucination. That's something that Gino says. And that's really making sure that everybody is moving in that direction. You're all connected. So it's hard to come up with, I don't think I have a favorite. And we encourage businesses to get 80% strong in each of these 6 key components, because 100% is kind of utopia. But if you're getting strong, I do find that issues, those challenges and obstacles, very often fall in 2 of those components, which is people and process. If you can get your processes, the way you do business, documented and followed by all, it makes your business more scalable, more profitable, and more fun to run. And that's sometimes the place where people resist, because process is hard. It's, we also recommend that they do it at an entrepreneurial level. 20% of the steps to get you 80% of the way. So when you can get those processes really dialed in and then train everybody, manage everybody, and they're really clear on what they need to do, some of those issues start to fall away because everyone's doing it the right and best way every time. So, well, I don't have favorites. I do have areas where people tend to have the most challenges.
Yeah, and maybe items that you want to focus on first before you progress to something else.
Sometimes, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about challenges, and I think about those big rocks that are on the chart. Do you have a recommendation or just advice that you could give? If you're in a room, it's so easy to talk about everything that's not going well,
right?
And to make it so it doesn't take over, I guess, the whole conversation. So do you have any advice that you would give in those meetings where you're going through the big rocks and then just making sure you're clearing those, but more focused on the bigger picture?
Sure. So when we think of rocks, we think of 90-day business priorities. And it's human nature to just really get into something and be all in for about 90 days, and then you start going down your well-worn path. So the 90-day, you sit together with your leadership team first and come together and say, all right, these are our 5 to 7 company priorities. We're going to set these as priorities, and then we'll take individual rocks as well. But again, no more than 5 total. You're setting those priorities so that when things happen, you know that as a group, we've said these are the most important things. I think what you're kind of mixing the two, and that is so common, that's what everybody does, is that then there are issues that come up. Those things that just obstacles, challenges that just every business deals with every day. Those go on an issues list. And then weekly in a level 10 meeting, you are identifying the root of the issue, discussing how we can solve it, and then coming to a decision to a solve. And someone takes a task, a 1 to 2 week task that, okay, this is the first step in solving this issue. It might, if you're in a quarterly meeting, turn into a rock. It might be something like, okay, we're going to make this a rock because this keeps showing up. But it's amazing how when you break those two apart, here are our priorities and here are those things that are just getting in our way, and you separate them out, you can stay really focused in a meeting and get a lot done because you're setting priorities. Because how many times you're just in the day-to-day, when you take the time to step out and work on your business and get out of it, it just gives people an opportunity to be creative and see things in a different light so they can do it differently and not keep having those same things show up.
That's a huge takeaway for me. And they aren't the same. It's like your issues aren't the same as your big rocks, and they should be handled differently.
Yes.
And I know you and I had a discussion about that exercise where you fill the glass with your big rocks versus your small pebbles, and how, you can't fill it if you fill it with the pebbles first.
Right.
There isn't enough time in the day to fit the big rocks. You have to go with the big rocks first. So I thought that was really, really fascinating.
Stephen Covey did a college class, and he had a cylinder, and like you said, the rocks are your biggest priorities. Yep. Pebbles are your day-to-day, just everything you need to get done. The sand is all the other stuff that happens every day, and the water is kind of the flow of life. And like you said, you physically cannot fit everything in the container if you don't put the rocks in first. Yep. So that's about really, again, everybody getting on the same page with these are our biggest priorities. This is what is going to propel us forward to our 1-year goals, our 3-year picture. This is what we need to be doing, and we've all decided we have to carve away time to get that done. And
it speaks to prioritizing, right?
Right.
Because we talk about, you can't, if you just focus on the pebbles and you're not moving any of those big rocks to get to your 90-day priorities.
Right.
Yeah.
And the sand is very often the issues, those things that come in every day and derail us. And not that you'll get rid of all of them, but you'll come up with systems for dealing with them, and you'll have a way, eventually the entire company has, some piece of a rock, and we didn't talk about scorecard, but they have a measurable on a scorecard, but they also have an opportunity to raise their hand and say, I have an idea, or this is an issue that we keep running into. And then everybody feels heard, but also some of the best ideas come from the people in the company that are out on the front lines. Mm-hmm. And that's when really the magic of EOS happens, when the entire company is running on EOS and using the same language, and they have rocks, and they have regular, weekly meetings and quarterly meetings, and it's incredible.
So I want to switch the conversation a little bit, just to focus on one-on-ones.
Okay.
Because I do think, and I of course run a team, and when you talk about your staff and we're all moving in the right direction in order to implement change and move in that right direction, it's important as a leader to hold quality one-on-ones. And,
yes.
And I remember in our dialogue, we spoke a lot about what that cadence would look like. So what can you tell everybody tuning in about what you would recommend in terms of how often to hold a connect with your team?
You should be connecting with your team on a weekly basis and having what we call an L10 meeting. It's the same agenda every week. And without getting into that, because I think you and I could go on for a while, but exactly. We call it a level 10 meeting because it's really effective. Same agenda every week, same time, same place. So that's great for the entire team to get together and work on issues, talk about where you are with rocks, how you're doing. But then with your direct reports, if quarterly, you sit down and you have a really honest conversation. And these quarterly meetings, we kind of give you a guide called 555. So what are the 5 core values, and are they living those core values, and really catching them live the core values and pointing out when they're doing it really well. The 5 measurables on the scorecard, those are those things that they're doing week in and week out so that you are meeting your goals. It's, just a way of really looking at that and having everybody have something they're responsible for. And then the 5 rocks, which typically they don't have 5 measurables and 5 rocks, but it's a good way to remember it. What are those priorities, and how are we working towards those? So that's your framework. But then that meeting is really a discussion. Mm-hmm. You're not just telling your direct report what you want them to be doing. You're listening and asking them, do you have the resources? What do you need? What are your goals? You're having a real conversation and finding out where they stand, but also being really clear about your expectations, because people want to know what's expected of them. Mm-hmm. So many times there's ambiguity, and then someone's disappointed because they didn't do something, but it wasn't clear that it was expected.
Yep.
So this system really helps everyone understand what they're responsible for, and managers be able to manage to help them. Maybe they're not clear on the process and they need to be trained again. Maybe they're not following the process, but just having that one-on-one, maybe they don't have the resources to be able to do what you're asking them to do. So that quarterly conversation, and that's what it is really important. And hopefully you don't have more than 7, or some people have 12 direct reports, but that's kind of hitting, that's a lot.
Yep. And I loved that you used the word framework, because I do think it's important that so just also for you as the leader, but also for your employees, that they know what the framework is and what the discussion will be every single time on that one-on-one. And to your point, it should be a dialogue, but you understand what you're going in to speak about.
Right.
What would you say about length for both the team meetings and then your one-on-ones? Because I remember this is something that came up that I was surprised with.
So our leadership level 10 meetings are 90 minutes, and it saves you time. And so a lot of teams
all
resist.
leaders,
They're
almost all leaders like, what do you mean 90 minutes? You don't have 90 minutes.
No one wants to sit in a room for 90 minutes, right? So, but it's the same agenda every week. You start with coming in and sharing good news, one piece of personal good news, one piece of business good news. And then you are running through scorecard. How are we doing? Is it on track or off track? If it's off track, it drops down to the issues list. Rocks, on track or off track? Again, drops down. Are there any headlines or news that you want to share about people in the company? Is there anything about customers or employees that we need to share with each other? So that's all just checking in. 60 minutes of the 90-minute meeting is identifying the root of the issue, because very often it's a symptom of a deeper root.
Yep.
Discussing how can we solve this in a different way, and then coming up with a decision. Okay, we need information. We're just going to make a decision and go a different direction, or this is the first step. And then we conclude by reviewing the to-dos. That comes from the solves. Are there any cascading messages, anything we need to share with everyone else on the team? And then you rate the meeting 1 to 10. That's the level 10. Right. Now, as you roll that out into departments, everybody is different. If they are big teams and they're crucial, very often they find 90 minutes is what is needed. I work with a lot of manufacturers. They have a hard time doing that with people on the floor. So sometimes they'll do a stand-up meeting and they'll do 15, 20 minutes, or they'll do multiple meetings. Sometimes, everybody has to adjust it for what they're doing for that weekly meeting. As far as the quarterly meeting, that can be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, but you just want to let your people know that you care about them and you're listening to them, but you're also being really clear about your expectations. So all of that is a little bit customizable for the type of business you're working with. I've also worked with a lot of financial planners, so they really resisted 90 minutes. They all have come back and said it's the best 90 minutes we spend every week. And they actually do in their departments, the back end of their offices, they do a full 90 minutes.
And it seems alarming, right? As a leader, just thinking 90 minutes, how can I find time for that? But to your point, as you're digging in, so that you and I are corresponding via email, and if we just got into one room and hashed it out, it actually would save a lot of time on the back end. So I think it's just comfortability, getting everyone used to that 90-minute time slot. But I think in the long run, you would actually save time, and that way your team's all on the same page. And then construction is another area, and that they're like, how do we get our teams? They're out on the road, and the teams have actually really appreciated it. When they started doing it, they appreciate it. So, well, we spoke about a lot today, and I personally had a lot of takeaways. But if you could impart our readers with a few, a quick synopsis about what they should leave today with, what would you say? Some quick bullet points.
That if you have a business independently, you're an entrepreneur and you have an independent business, typically 10 to 250 people, this is a system that can help you scale. If you're at the point where you're going through a succession plan, it's a great system. Just so many reasons people do it. They're frustrated. They're, not breaking through the ceiling financially, or they're a little bit of chaos with people. Nothing's working. It's just a great solution. And you can start with the book Traction and read Traction by Gino Wickman. I also do, and all EOS implementers, there are about 31 of us in the New England area, we do a complimentary 90-minute meeting where we take you through the 6 key components and really tie it into your business and your challenges and share with you how it might work for you. And that's really where you figure out if it's a good fit. And then from there we share with you what that journey looks like. But, really starting either with the website, EOSworldwide.com, or the book is a great place to start. And of course, you can reach out to me. I love to, one of our core values is help first. I love to talk to business owners and help them in any way I can.
That sounds great. And I do have the book right here. So I've already started reading it. It's excellent. And it has a lot of the information that you provided today in here. And of course, if someone has additional questions, they can reach out to you directly, which is amazing. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you.
This
and
was
I look
fun.
forward to doing this again soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.